Karen Summing with Karen's Blue Ridge Stamping. Thanks so much for joining me today. Today's video talks about using triangle cuts to set up focal points for your cards. Using this technique, you can quickly make a beautiful card front with just a couple of cuts. Using this technique, you can add images and greetings later if you need to do that and are pressed for time, or when you need a custom card. Join me at the craft table and let's take a look. Today I have several pieces of cardstock already cut and affixed to the fronts of cards, and I wanted to just show you some samples to start off the video to see the triangular cuts. In all of these examples, you'll see that there's a piece of colored cardstock on the bottom, and immediately above that, the next layer up, there is a white mat. So this is just plain white cardstock, also glued to the card base. Above that, I have triangles, and you'll see these triangles are not exactly the same size. The two on the ends are the same size, the two on the top and bottom are the same size, and they all fit together. This actually came from one piece of paper and two opposing cuts. I'll show you how I made the cuts in just a moment, but I want to show you a couple of other things first. I frequently like to put a white or a coordinating color of mat directly onto my card base and then have the triangles above that. And in fact, when I have those mats, I go ahead and put my triangles on the mat, and then I put all of that onto the card base next. Now for another example, and this one already has a focal point on it. This card is glued directly to the card base. There is no white mat, and so you can do either of those things. It's purely a design choice for you. If I do this directly to the card base, then these triangles, the piece of paper I start with is going to be 1/4 inch larger than these, because these triangles are equal in size to the white mat. You'll have all of these measurements on my blog, so please be sure to check those out when the video is finished. Okay, so how do I decide what I want to do for triangles? What design, what papers do I want to use? Thankfully, Stampin' Up! Has two-sided designer series paper, and what I'll usually do is use one double-sided piece of designer series paper. I'll make my cuts, and then I'll use both sides of that designer series paper. Because Stampin' Up! Products are so well coordinated, I can almost be guaranteed every time that whatever's on the front side coordinates with what is on the back side. All right, the beauty of this layout is that when you do the triangles, they all come together in a point in the center of the card. Everything points right to the center. That is a really good way to get a focal point. The eye is being drawn to the center of the card before you add anything onto it. Then when you add something else to it, that has an automatic background that leads the eye right to the center, to the focal point. So this is a great design tip. All right, let's take the next step now. So far I've talked about using designer series paper for this card design. You don't have to do that if you don't have designer series paper. So let's talk about the card design that I've started now. I'm going to use it to demonstrate the cut tonight because it's easier to see this a little bit if I do this. Now, these are Cajun Craze, Early Espresso, and Crumb Cake. And all of these are plain cardstock, color cardstock. And the way I've gotten this design on here is to use Versamark ink. So you can literally take any piece of cardstock that you want to, make your own designer series paper, so to speak, and have something that is visually interesting on your card as well. So I'm going to use this one as my cutting example. I have already glued these two pieces, triangles, directly to the card base. I don't need these for now, but I'm going to keep them because I can make a second card with these additional pieces. So the way that I got this was to use the Nature's Harvest stamp set. Here it is. And this is the stamp that I used to make these designs. Now, is that anything artistically? I don't know. I just think that it's an extra thing to make lovely backgrounds, or perhaps to put behind the flowers or whatever. But for my purposes, I'm making my own background papers out of this stamp. I have already affixed it to my acrylic block. And the way that I'm getting this design is to use Versamark ink. You may be familiar with that. It's a watermark stamp. And it literally has no color to it, and mine is well used. You can see it looks kind of grungy, but that's okay. And I'm going to take a scrap sheet of paper and place underneath my cardstock, because I don't want this Versamark ink getting on my work surface. So this paper is just there to absorb that ink when I go off the edges with my design. So I am just stamping, and I am just randomly placing a pattern on here. There's nothing that you're going to see in very deep contrast right now, because this is a clear ink, and so it won't show up very well. And I should also tell you that before I started stamping this, I used my embossing buddy. That's this little thing here. This used to be sold by Stampin' Up. It is retired and is not available any longer, but you can find various items like this out in the stamping world. And I think it's pretty much a cornstarch bag. You could also use a used dryer sheet to rub over the surface of your paper, and what that does is keep this Versamark ink from going in places that you don't want it to go. So now that I have that stamped, I'm going to be very careful to put the lid back on my Versamark ink and get that out of the way. And then I'm going to bring in my clear embossing powder, and I usually keep it in a little tub, and when I'm ready to use it, then I just have a spoon there and it's ready to go on. And what you're going to see is that is sticking to the ink where I stamped. I just knock off the extra that doesn't need to be on the page, and I have, there you can see it the best. It is ready now to heat emboss. Now I'm going to do the heat embossing. I'm going to use my heat tool, my Stampin' Up! Heat tool. And it's going to be a little noisy, so I'm probably not going to talk during this, and I may even speed up the video because you don't really need to see it. Once you see it start melting, you really don't need to see much more of that process. I'll let it heat up just a little bit. As it melts, you will see it starting to turn color. You may have noticed as I came back down this way that these got a little bit darker. What I found when I was doing the early espresso was that I didn't get quite as much heat on those as I wanted to, and it did not give me that nice shiny surface. I think you can see that glinting in the camera. So now this has kind of a rubbery feel to it when you get finished with it. At any rate, this card is now ready, or this piece of cardstock is now ready to make my opposing triangles. So let's talk about how to do that. This is so very simple. You will love the simplicity of this. It's not hard at all. You just have to try it one time, and I will say the first time I tried this, I really confused myself with it, but you need not do that. All right, so I have my trimmer. You probably know this is the cutting channel. And so what I'm going to do is take one corner of this piece of cardstock, and I'm going to hold it down with my finger. I'm going to move the other corner into the channel as well, and sometimes I get a little off, so I have to just mess with it until I get it where I want it. And when you're satisfied, you simply make a cut straight down. And what you end up with is 2 halves. Now, if you are good and you're steady, you can just turn this to the opposite side and make it work for you. However, what I have found as a fail-safe method for me is to come down on the ends and put little pieces of tape there. Now, let me tell you that I am using Post-it labeling and cover-up tape. It has the same tack as a Post-it note, so it's very low tack, and it's going to come back off very easily. If you wanted to, and you have it, you could use washi tape as well on the back of here. All that does is hold those 2 pieces steady, and it keeps the corners together. Now, here's my cut that I've already made, going in this direction. I am going to simply turn this around and do the opposing corners. So now I'm going to put this right in my cutting channel. I'm going to move that edge also to the cutting channel. And when I'm satisfied that each edge is there, I'm going to make another cut. And now I have 4 pieces. 2 of these pieces are the longer edges, such as I have on this sample. You'll see that fits just like that. But I don't need those for this card. What I need is the other pieces. So I'll lay those aside, and what I have left then is these 2 triangles that are going to fit in this space. All right, let me move my trimmer. I am now ready to place these on the card. So let me get my glue, and I'm using green glue. That's technically Tombow multi-mono liquid glue. And you can see mine's kind of filthy. It's well used, but that's all right. It doesn't hurt a thing. I used to lay this down on the table to glue, and what I found out is that I have better control of my glue if I hold it. And I'm not using any particular gluing pattern. I'm just getting some glue on there. And I'm going to come in here, and I'm leaving space between the elements and just getting that as evenly placed as I can so that I have some of that Cajun craze shining through there. Then do this side. If you look at it and your corners or your centers actually seem to be pretty well lined up, then you're going to have a pretty good looking card. Okay, so this is how you take plain cardstock, turn it into your own design, and add it to your card base as triangular cuts. All right, now let's talk about what I'm going to do in the center of this card. Again, you can use this as a landscape orientation, or you can turn it this direction and use it as a vertical orientation so that the card opens this direction. So for this one, I'm actually going to leave it in this orientation and make it a vertical design. All right, for my focal point, I'm going to use Crumb Cake ink and the Nature's Harvest stamp set, which I use to make the background. Just give that a little press to make sure I get a good image since this is so large. And there we have, that's just about the shade that I want. I am not going to color this at all. I'm going to leave it just like it is, but I am going to cut it out using my layering circles die. And you'll see that this is going to become the focal point for this card. If you're not familiar with Stampin' Dimensionals, these are little shaped pieces that have glue on both sides. They have covers on them so that they don't glue down to anything before you're ready for them to. And I'm pretty generous with my Stampin' Dimensionals because I don't want any piece of this image to sag. So I put a pretty good mini on there. And I put one in the center because I don't want the center to sag either. And then generally I just use my Take Your Pick tool and I just press and lift, and that takes the backing off of these. And this Take Your Pick tool sort of corrals those little pieces of paper for me so that they don't go everywhere. And then I just put them all together and throw them away. All right, now this is ready to affix to the card. And I wanted to kind of have a little less than straight up and down design. I'm putting it just a little bit more toward the top than in the center because I need room for a greeting here. So let me get that out and we'll finish this up. Okay, I'm using a happy birthday greeting on this. And I'm just going to place it down here at the bottom. I took this greeting from the Mini Messages stamp set, and rather than use the die that comes with that, I just cut it out for myself. And I believe I'm going to have to adjust that a little bit because I got it crooked. Okay, thankfully, Stampin' Dimensionals are a little bit forgiving, so if you get something crooked or need to try it again, it will let you move that a little bit. All right, so that is almost finished, but I have one more piece to add to the card. This is a sneak peek for you. Coming in January 22, we have the brushed brass butterflies that will be released with the January to June 2022 mini catalog. These are just gorgeous. They are brushed brass. And there we go. You can see how shiny they are. And I am just going to take one of these little butterflies. They already have adhesive on the back. And I am going to place a little butterfly right here on the card for a little visual interest. That is it. Here we have our finished card. Now you know how to use triangle cuts to set up focal points for your cards. If you've enjoyed this video, I hope that you'll give me a thumbs up to like the video immediately below. If you want to see more content from my YouTube channel, please hit that red subscribe button. And if you'd like to be notified when I add new content, also hit the little notification bell. Finally, if you like Stampin' Up! Products and you don't already have a demonstrator, I would love to earn your business. You can find my various contact points in the information below the video. Thanks so much for joining me today. Until next time, may God bless.